Welcome to the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach. Join me as we explore the dynamic intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. From the challenges to the triumphs, we're here to unravel it all. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical wisdom, and a whole lot of inspiration. Let's embark on this empowering journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host Esther Roche, and today I'm joined by Michelle. Hello Michelle, and welcome to the show.
Hello Esther, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you today. So Michelle, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Oh, it's really hard introducing myself because there's so many things I do. I never know how much time. So in typical ADHD, the first thing I want to say is I'm neurodivergent. So I am very kind of ADHD and, constantly sparks in my head, which is why I find it hard to be succinct about things. But amongst many things, I'm a mom. Apart from me being neurodivergent, I'm also a mom of 3 neurodivergent children, all with different issues. We have the whole gamut of autism, ADHD, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dyslexia, sensory processing disorder, a lot in between us all. And so I think that this has actually taken me down a journey where it's taken me many decades to actually get to where I am today, where I'm also running a business, teaching neurodivergent teenagers to start their own businesses. So effectively offering what I wish I had back in my youth, in my teens, and in my younger years when I started my first business. I've been running my own businesses for 30 years now. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, also kind of the mentoring and coaching the teenagers to start their businesses and become free and autonomous and independent. I also am a therapeutic writer, so my background is in various therapeutic modalities like animal-assisted therapy, bibliotherapy, therapeutic writing, hypnotherapy, counseling, life coaching. I've done so many different modalities, but I focus very much on therapeutic writing and bibliotherapy, using books as therapy. So that's another part. I write books with important messages that I want to convey to the reader, to kind of change the heart. And I blend the two, like the two come together. So my therapeutic work definitely comes into my business. And then aside from that, I'm from Cyprus. I live in North Wales. My husband is Cypriot, and we have 3 children who are now 21, 17, and 13, and they have been home educated for the last 13 years. So I'm also a home educating mom, as well as everything else. So I think that's all you really need to know. That's plenty, isn't it?
You seem, that there's quite a lot there, and it's really busy. So just going back a little bit, so you've been running your business for 30 years, and I'm just looking at your children's ages. So which part were you doing more? Were you doing, the supporting the younger people to obviously start businesses, or were you doing something completely different before your children came along?
Yeah, well, the young entrepreneur startups, the business I'm doing now with the teenagers, is only a year old. So I only started that last year with a business partner who's also a home educating parent. So it was a very organic thing that happened. We both had the same vision, the same struggles, the same things we wanted to give our kids. And so from that was birth young entrepreneur startups. But my previous businesses were, I started with a pet shop when I was living in Cyprus before having children. And with the vision, all my businesses are always kind of driven by something. So I had this vision to change the way people treated their animals in Cyprus. I wanted to educate them. So having that first business, that pet shop that had started with a vision, actually, and ending up losing the business because of my neurodivergence, actually kind of scared me into going into another business. But when my husband and I moved to the UK, which is it was 2001. I'm with numbers, I can't work it out. And we then were really struggling to create a life here. For a couple of years, worked in fish and chip shops and cafes and things like that. But my husband had always worked in hospitality. So we then had the idea of starting a little cafe. And not to go into too much detail because I know of the time, we ended up starting a tea room. And so by then, our oldest was 2 years old, and I was expecting another son at the time. So I was quite heavily pregnant while we were renovating the shop. My husband was working in a fish and chip shop. I was painting furniture and we were trying to do everything ourselves to save money. And we had a toddler who incidentally was undiagnosed autistic and ADHD at the time. Of course, now when I go back, I see all his challenges and why, but I didn't know at the time. So I'm trying to parent my toddler with all his struggles and set up a shop and a business. I was heavily pregnant and sadly ended up having a stillbirth. And we don't know whether it was the stress that we were all under or what. No, the doctors didn't know why our baby was stillborn. But that was kind of, I was going to say, it was set us back. It didn't set us back in a practical way because we had debts to pay back in Cyprus. So we had to start the business. But, you know, we opened the business 2 months after our baby's stillbirth, and it was surreal because I wasn't really functioning. I was trying to parent my little one and run this business and send money back home. And it was really, really stressful. But the business was successful. We won many awards. Again, it's that neurodivergence which stood out because of my creativity, because we were always doing things that were out of the box, that were different. And then 7 years later, we sold the business, and that's when we decided to take our oldest out of school, start home educating. And this happened because he was being bullied so much that we just got to a point where we had to. But so by then, let me just mention, so by 2013, our son was 8. He was being bullied at school. It was really awful. He completely lost his confidence. We were really worried about his mental health. And by then I'd had another son who was 4 and my daughter who was just a baby.
Wow.
And in between, I'd had more miscarriages and things as well. So it was incredibly stressful, but we were just like, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So by 2013, we decided to sell the business, take our son out of school, the baby's out of nursery, and just change our life. It was, we got to a point where we were thinking, why are we doing all this? Like, why are we living like this? Who are we doing it for? I'm sending my children away from me for 7-8 hours a day. I can work in a business that barely keeps us going because by the time you pay your staff wages and your taxes and your VAT and everything, we're away from our home and our families and our friends, and we never have quality time with our children. And by then I'd had 9 pregnancies, 3 living children. And I was like, why are we doing this? Who are we doing this for? And it was that having to just stop and reevaluate everything and address everything. And by then our youngest son had been diagnosed with ADHD. So we decided, right, let's start again. So sold the business, paid off all our debts, moved to Greece for 2 years, worked in humanitarian projects, volunteers, fostered children, worked with the homeless, worked with just so many different projects with Syrian refugees, and basically kind of reset our lives. And then we came back 2 years later and just started again afresh with this new perspective. We were home educating, but then we discovered a way that worked for us and our children and their needs. And I then had started another business. It was a food business this time, working from home so I could support my family. COVID happened, all of that. And then we kind of came back to where I was then studying for my therapy work because I thought I was going to be a psychotherapist. And then I started to see that I can't do that. Again, my neurodivergence. I was like, I can't do this psychotherapy because I can't. My perspective was I cannot help people from a manual. I can't be like, hang on, what is the book? Oh yeah, I have to say this to
Yeah.
you right now, and now I have to say this, and now I have to dress like this, and now I have to behave like this. And I was like, and there's all these ethical boundaries which have their purpose, but I felt I can't be me. I can't connect and do what I feel comes to me intuitively, and because we're very sensitive in neurodivergent. So I realized that wasn't the path for me. So then I just used all my modalities to put them into my work as a writer, as a speaker, and then a year ago into young entrepreneur startups, which is kind of like everything has just come full circle to where I feel like I was supposed to be all along, having gone through this massive journey to get there.
Well, it's really interesting because you've really touched on things that I think when people outside look at somebody and they sort of see your business and think, oh my God, they're so successful and stuff, they don't have a clue what you've gone through or what's made you the person you are today. And it seems like you've had your fair share of ups and downs and just trying to manage and cope, but yet you still have hope, you still have that drive that you are going to do it. What motivates you? What gives you that drive to keep going?
I think it's been a few different things that have happened over the years. The one big thing has been I lost my parents when I was 5. So my childhood was extremely traumatic as well. So I lost my parents when I was 5, months apart from each other. My father was killed. Well, he disappeared after a sea accident. He was in the merchant navy. So his ship sank, and he disappeared. Some people survived, some people drowned, but he was never found. So kind of always grew up with this, waiting for the door to knock, thinking he's going to turn up one day, he's going to turn up one day. But I mean, it's been 45 years. And then my mother took her own life a few months later. So I was 5 years old when both my parents died.
Wow.
And I'm an only child. So throughout my life, being in care, in and out of care, being a young carer to my grandparents who would have custody of me for some time, being moved around so much, but never been seen for me.
Yeah.
Like I was always the problem that needed to be placed somewhere. When I then became a mother, I mean, there's so much in between, but there isn't the time to cover it all. But when I became a mother, when I had basically learned to survive, I just became a survivor. It was always about survive, survive, survive. So I became incredibly innovative. What's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do to get to that next step? Yeah. And I struggled with my mental health hugely. There's many times I struggled with wanting to take my own life as well, I'll be really honest. Because there are so many times and I'd think, this is too much. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I have no one to turn to, no support network. Because like all my immediate family died by the time I was 14, including all my grandparents. And so it's like just you're on your own, nobody gets you, you can't understand how the world functions, and you're just trying to survive and look after your family. So by the time I had my son, and by the time the bullying was going on, I remember really distinctly the day when I'd seen a newspaper article about a mother who'd walked into her child's bedroom and found they'd taken their own life because of bullying. So for me, that was like the moment that I said, I'm not going to be that mother. I'm not going to be that mother. He's coming out of that place. His life is more important than how are we going to work everything out? It was like, I need to keep him safe first, then I'll figure it out. Now, I don't know how I'm going to educate him. I don't know what he's going to do in his life. I don't know any of those things, but what I know is I need to keep the child safe. So that was the first thing for me, because I'd been through the experience of suicide. I knew, and of course, there is a statistic that if you've had a parent die from suicide, it increases your chances of also dying from suicide. And so it was, prevalent for me that I needed to look after my children. And so that was the first thing. And then when we started home educating, and I was really struggling with that because I couldn't create structure. They all learn very differently. They're neurodivergent, so we couldn't do it we couldn't do so many things I could see other people doing. And I then had this conversation with myself, and I sat down with a bit of paper and I thought, okay, Michelle, if you were to die tomorrow, again, because death has been so prevalent, it is a thing that some people might go, why is she thinking like that? But for me, it was very real. I also have an autoimmune condition and things like that. So obviously I do think about my mortality and things like that as well. So I sat down and I think, okay, if you were to die tomorrow, and if God forbid your husband was also to go, if you were both going to go or whatever, how have you equipped your children for life? And what did you do? And I kind of had to reflect to myself and think, what are the things that I need to impart to my children before I go, whenever that's going to be? And that actually forced me to sit down, and I made this list, and I started with, oh, need to teach them to cook, need to teach them to clean, need to teach them to grow food, need to blah, 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 blah. I mean, this huge list. Mm-hmm. And then I sat down and I thought, well, no one taught me any of that. No one. I had to teach myself to do all of that. And I learned the hard way. I burnt things, I fixed them. You know, I had to do it the hard way, but I learned. I taught myself to do everything. And I realized that the society puts this, you know, by this age, you've got to do this and you've got to be able to do all that. And I thought, actually, that doesn't exist. I can study anytime in my life, in night classes, open university, whatever. I can start a business anytime. I can get work. I can do anything, anytime in my life. There is no age restriction. And so my children can do all of that anytime. What can I impart to them as a mother that no one else can teach them and they can't teach themselves? And it was two things. It was entrepreneurship, because that was the thing that helped me become innovative and creative and find solutions. Even when we were in work, like when my husband lost his job, I stepped in with, let's start a food business. Let's start cooking Greek food at home. That will help. You know, it was that innovation. And the other thing was my presence. It was like, okay, the one thing nobody can give my children is my unconditional love, my presence, and my stable kind of, I guess, presence. It's like the home is their refuge, is the place they can always come back to whenever things are difficult. So I must make sure that our home feels like a refuge, like a retreat, or what, I can't think of the name now. Mm-hmm. And my presence, which means everything else has to take second place, because I need to be well enough to be here for them, to guide them, to love them, to nurture them, to support them in becoming who they want to be. And I think that those two things for me, that conversation really helped me get my priorities right. And it helped me see the future and think every day now is led by that. Am I present for them? Is something stressing me out where I can't be present? That has to go. That has to go. That has to go. Because that's what nobody else can give them. And that's what's going to always be with them when I'm gone. And so I did kind of have to visit my mortality, I guess, to think about that. And then the other thing, to answer your question, I know I went off in a tangent, but coming back to your question, it's that I feel my life has got to count for something. Yeah. If I've gone through all this heartache and trauma, and there was abuse in my childhood as well, and all of this stuff, and all the experiences I've had to come through, they must count for something. So I've had to question my legacy. When that time comes, what am I leaving behind? How are people going to think about me? And I realized it's not about leaving a financial inheritance for me. It's not about leaving wealth. It's not about people saying, oh, Michelle was this amazing person, or she has all these letters after her name. Like, none of that matters. For me, it was, how will my family and my descendants think about me? And it was, I just want them to think about me as a source of love. She didn't have everything figured out. Mom made mistakes. She got things wrong, but she loved us. And she was always there for us. And I thought, that's it. And if I can stretch that to children out there, because like young people are my passion, if I can stretch that out to live in a way that's meaningful, that makes a difference to other young people.
So, Michelle, you've mentioned quite a lot of stuff, and, you know, I can't even begin to sort of look and see what your journey has been like. But it's interesting that you've mentioned what is important to you. Because when you speak to different people, success looks a different thing to different people. And you've obviously looked at it and looked at what your priorities are. And I think that's, quite a vital, important message to anybody who's listening, really, to sort of have your priorities set right. And you can't look at what so and so is doing, because we're all on different journeys and we've all come from different paths. And I really love the fact that, one of the things I speak about is obviously the love, the communication with your children. I'm a mom of 5 myself, and I understand the importance of having the right support, if you like, because for me to be able to be who I am is because I had that foundation of having the unconditional love, of having that support that says you can do it. But obviously you've had to find your own way to do it despite everything that has happened. When I just go back a little bit, did you know at that young age, or were you diagnosed quite late in life?
Yeah, I was actually only diagnosed last year, so very, very late. And so I'd spent most of my life thinking I'm damaged. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my brain. I'm damaged. I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD and all these different other things. And now I'm realizing it was all along sort of ADHD, autism, and the related issues that those come with. And it wasn't until we started looking at our children and realizing for them, and then thinking, oh my gosh, but I do that. I think like that. I struggle with that. And it's been really hard because these are also disabilities. I'm highly sensitive to noise, smells, touch, fabrics, labels, everything, my environment, people, perfumes, all of that. And it makes day-to-day life so incredibly challenging. So, of course, because I didn't know why, I just felt damaged. I felt like people were feeling, oh my gosh, it's Michelle's going to come and she's going to be like, what's that smell? What's that noise? I can't, and you have this in the back of your head, and it's really destructive because I didn't know, why am I like this? Whereas when I got the diagnosis, I realized suddenly everything fell into place, and I thought, oh, okay, now I understand why. And then actually what I did is start to see, oh, but there are so many good things about it too, because perhaps that's why I'm so adaptable and so flexible and so kind of sensitive. To my family, I can tell. I walk in a room and I know immediately the energy in the room, the tone, everyone's feelings. I can tell if someone's just had an argument. And all my friends are always like, oh, you're freaking out, you're freaking out. But I'm just so tuned in to everything, which is exhausting as well. But it's a gift because it helps me with conversations. It helps me when I'm helping my students. I can pick up on the calls when something's going on, and usually I'm like, I'll spot what it is, but very diplomatically bring it in. And I do realize that a lot of our struggles in society are because we don't understand ourselves fully. We don't understand each other. And so we just default to judgment or criticism rather than there's something different about this person. So how can I connect in a different way, or whatever that might be? And especially as parents, I think as parents, the thing that frustrates me a lot in my work is parents who are very rigid. And I come this across a lot because they've learned a certain way. They've been programmed and conditioned and grown in a certain society, and they've learned a certain way of doing things. And then they're trying to impose that on their children because they think that's the best way. My thing is always questioning, is that the best way? Why is that the best way? Who said, for example, we all have to sit around a table and eat meal together? In my family, we'll probably kill each other if we sat around a table because we're all annoying each other. Stop chewing loudly. Stop doing that. My kids between them, oh my gosh, he burped. I'm not eating my food. I can't touch it now. He did this. And it's just like, right, everyone take your meals, go to wherever you want, eat in your own peace and quiet because we can't do this. It doesn't work for us, but we connect in different ways. We don't have to connect around the dinner table. We trigger each other. So we do other things that still connect us in different ways. And we do lots of one-on-one dates with our kids, take them out one-on-one, have quality time with them, and that gives us that time for connection. So we kind of scrapped bedtimes because sleep is a big thing with neurodivergence. And I let them sleep in the morning, and thankfully they're perfectly healthy and we still get everything done. But we just do it differently. And I think that's one of the things that frustrates, that rigidity. Why I always question, why do I think this is important? Who says it is? Why did they say it is? What's the other picture? What's the other perspective? What works for my family? Like, it's a constant work in progress for us to do that, but it works amazingly well for our family.
And I think, you know, that's really important as well, because you're not trying to put everybody in one box, you know, one size fits all, because I think we're all different. And I always say that to people, because sometimes I think there's this thing where you think, yeah, just because, yeah, I've got 5 children, they've all come from me, but they're not the same person. They're not like me. They don't think like me. You know, they might have certain traits that are obviously from us, but at the same time, they're their own individual people. You know, they've got their own thoughts, their own mind and stuff. And it's how do you best support them and guide them in finding their own journeys. And like what you said, you know, that's something that really, I've spoken to several people actually that have that element of, this is what my parents wanted to be. I never wanted to be a doctor, for instance, or I didn't want to be an accountant, but that was the route set, that this is what you're going to be. But I like the fact that nowadays, I think a lot of people are realizing that you can start again regardless of how old you are. You just have a fresh start going to a different career. And that's quite good, because also my worry is with kids, they're supposed to know what they want to do for the rest of their lives at 14. And it's impossible. You know, sometimes we are like, you know, you might be 40, 50, whatever age you are, you still don't know what you really want to be or what to do. So it's only fair to sort of give them the guidance so they have the foundation, I suppose, and then, you know, best support them as best as we can. So, you know, with your work, obviously it's really interesting, because you've mentioned quite a lot of things around the children, the bullying, which it is quite devastating, the levels of bullying for various reasons that happen in the schools. And then obviously having the challenge of homeschooling. How are you supporting, you know, the youngsters that you're supporting? I know you've got a campaign that you've recently launched, so you can tell us a little bit about that. But it's also, you know, what sort of young entrepreneurs are you working with? Are you just working with people, neurodivergent children, or are you just working with any young person who would like to learn some skills of starting their own businesses because they feel different to everybody else?
It's a really interesting question, actually. It's so perfectly timed, because up until now, so we've been going a year, we had initially reached out to the home education community because that's both Richard and I what we knew what best. And then we found people saying, oh, but my child's in school but really struggling. Could they do the course, your courses? I'm like, okay, fine, let's open it up to everybody. But what we actually found and identified is that most of our students are neurodivergent. And it is a thing that in entrepreneurship, most of the successful entrepreneurs you see out there are neurodivergent. So it seems to be, I don't know, let's call it a gift, an ability, because of the way that we can think so widely about everything and creative, innovate. And so realizing that most of our students are neurodivergent, we decided to actually focus on that community. So it doesn't matter how they're being educated, but if they're neurodivergent, I mean, we wouldn't not accept anybody who's not neurodivergent. But I think that is our strength, is that everything we create for the neurodivergent brain. You know, our course, our self-paced course, for example, we were trying to find a way, because we were finding in our live courses, a lot of the kids, they don't want to have their cameras on, they don't want to speak, you know, which is a thing, the anxiety. And so we decided to create the self-paced course with videos and worksheets, but we did it very visual, very short, very like templated, really simple, no jargon. And then that becomes really easy to do, not overwhelming, structured in a way that's easy to then, you know, you get like little experience points, go to your next lesson, but still with our coaching support every week live, so they can ask things. We have a forum. So we've brought in all these different ways to make it accessible for everybody, whatever their struggles might be. We're always here for them. So So it does seem to be that it's the neurodivergent community that is our sort of, let's say, ideal client. It's the people we seem to be able to help the most and work with the most. Our students so far, well, we've had such a variety because they're from all over the world as well. So we have students from all over the world: America, Bahrain, Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, Georgia, like all over the world. And we've had snake breeders, we've had somebody wanting to teach AI, we've had people selling surfboards, people making jewelry, making art, teaching gaming strategies online, tutoring music, like all kinds of professions and a lot of businesses. It's really exciting, making stuff, 3D printing, all kinds of things. Yeah, so that does seem to be, in fact, this morning, that's what I was doing. I was adjusting our website to the neurodivergent aspect because we realized that is what seems to be our niche now, and who we can help the most. So, yeah, and then the other thing that you asked about the campaign. So we launched a campaign 2 weeks ago with a petition to ask for reform in school, because obviously not everybody can home educate their children. It's not feasible for everybody. And even if most people can, we still have the situation with an outdated, very broken education system. And my heart is that how can we also make a difference in that area? So we're asking for a reform in school setups. There's two parts to the campaign: the school reform, which is where we're saying we need to change the environment in schools. To me, they look like prisons for children now. The buildings, the environment, the overcrowded classes, the classrooms, the way everyone's just lined up, and the age segregation. And there's so many things I could talk about why it's not conducive to learning and enjoying the process. And I don't know where this came from, that our kids should be sent away to be under pressure and to work, when children learn best by play and exploring and asking and investigating. And it was like, how about we go back to that? Because there's proven evidence that works better than what we have now. And it would stop, or at least significantly reduce, the struggles for neurodivergent students, as well as the bullying issues. Bullying comes from a place of pressure and authoritativeness. Like, schools are so authoritative, they're barking orders at kids. It's like, we should respect people, not bark orders at them and then punish them constantly for everything that they don't do. It's this is not the real world we live in. The way schools are run now do not reflect society and the real world. We want free thinking, innovative, problem-solving change makers, but we're raising soldiers, like robots. You do as you're told or you're being punished. You don't wear your blazer, you're being punished. You don't do this, you're being punished. And it's like, they can't, it's like this constant state of trauma. And so we're asking for changes that will just create a better learning environment, a nurturing environment, an environment where they can relax and decompress and learn and play and investigate. At the same time, we're asking for the wages to be equal for young people. Young people nowadays get almost half of the minimum wage for adults. And I really disagree with that. We have a huge issue of teenagers that can't get work. And when they do get work, they do the same job but get paid half of their colleagues. And I think that's really disempowering, and it strips away their dignity. And it's one of the things I'm seeing in our teenagers today is the way we treat them, we're stripping them from their dignity and their self-confidence and their self-value and worth, whether it's in the home or the school. We have to really change the way we behave towards them if we want them to be able to go out there and achieve in the world. And it does start with employment too, how they're treated as young employees as well. So it's a bit of a combination of things for the petition. I don't know where it's going to go, but I just felt I had to do something because I'm having these conversations with my kids and their friends. And it is heartbreaking. Just quickly to end with that, I'd like to add to that, what made me do the petition, I'd watched, of course, so many people have watched Adolescence on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I was thinking, I'm seeing the conversations online, and I'm like, we're having the wrong conversations. And is not anybody else seeing what I'm seeing? Why am I seeing things that are really concerning me? No one's talking about them. Everyone's talking about social media or the parents. It's like the parents are not to blame. Social media is not to blame, and nor are the youth. Like we have completely missed the issue, which is, where do your children spend most of their waking day? In school. That's where everything is happening. The bullying and the pressure and the conflicts and all this stuff. And that's where the biggest influence can happen, actually, is if we change the environment, that's where we can have the biggest impact on children. And then the other thing as well was that, I asked my son and I said to him, what do you think about this? All the adults are talking online about the lessons. What do you think about it? Because it's your age people we're talking about. And he said, oh, everyone's talking about social media as if raising the age limit is going to stop people going on it. People just lie about their age. They're still on it. Mm-hmm. And also, when he said to me, he said, Mom, I use my social media to teach me about my personal fitness and my diet. I don't use it to bully people. Why are we all being put in the same pot? Mm-hmm. All my friends are using social media. We're not using it to bully anyone. So, but what he said, well, most of my friends are taking drugs to numb out so they can survive in school and at home. And they are selling drugs because they can't find work. And when they find work, they're demeaned, or they get £6 an hour. And, what am I going to do with that? So he said, we're just disempowered at every angle, and then we're taxed. And I was like, okay, so what can I do as a mother? And he said to me, start a petition. See if you can get people to have the right conversation, because no one's talking to us. Everyone's like making their own assumptions out of this. So, it's what led me to, okay, I'll do this. I don't know where I'll go, but I can do this. So, wow. Yeah.
That's incredible. And to be honest, it makes you look at things from a different perspective when you're looking at all that. And it's usually those conversations that are missed. And I know exactly what you're saying about the whole blazer thing and stuff, because sometimes I feel, things there's a lot of harshness on certain things when you think, oh, they could do with support in other areas that are not necessarily that they've forgotten their tie or their blazer. It is important to be well presented, but at the same time, there's bigger issues than just that, that sometimes are lying underneath the surface, really, with all these students and young people in schools and stuff. So yeah, I'm just like, that's been an absolute, insightful conversation. So thank you so much for opening up and being so honest about, those things that are happening and stuff, because I think it will help a lot of other people, whether they're parents or not, and just listening in and sort of seeing where do we go and what do we do to make society better and help the youngsters really with all the things that they're going through. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you, Michelle, if they want to work with you?
It's really easy to find me on social media as Michelle Foulia, just as I'm on my little picture there. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on everywhere, I think now, LinkedIn. So just by putting my name in, you can find me on social media. And for young entrepreneur startups, it's youngentrepreneurstartups.com. So yeah, and again, we've got social media for that, but we have a website for it as well. So you can, or if you just find me, then I can send you the links to everything as well. That makes it easy. I do want to just say one last thing. If there was one thing that I wanted to leave with the parents that might be watching now is the thing that helped me the most in my life was removing fear. And it's only a recent thing. It's only a recent thing where I've started to realize that fear has been dictating a lot of my decisions, or our decisions as a society, that we're so moved and motivated by fear rather than what if there wasn't the fear? What's the best thing that can happen here? Rather than what's the worst thing? Then we go into panic and we make decisions based on fear. So I think for me, that's the thing that's helped me the most, just removing that fear and saying, well, what's the worst that can happen? And what's the solution to that? Like, they can leave school without anything, but they can study at any time in their life, even while balancing a job or a family. I've done it. So many people do it. And then, so then what's more important? Play, enjoyment, family, connection, all of that kind of stuff. Values, character, building character. That's so much more important than GCSEs, A levels, whatever things that they can do at any stage. So yeah, I think just kind of maybe question the fear would be a good approach that I would advise.
Oh, fantastic. It's been, I was actually going to say to you, what's the last thing you'd like to leave
That
the audience with? And you've preempted that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and, all the insights that you've kind of touched on and spoken about. I think they're important conversations that we do need to seriously have and consider and open up about. But thank you ever so much. I will be sharing the links to your website, and obviously just how people can contact you in order to work with you. And it'll be great to have the petition as well so that we can share it with more people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther.